Once on a Wednesday afternoon, a girl stepped into my office for her first session. Her name was Amy Locker. And under present circumstances, I don't think it's too gross a violation of professional ethics to use the subject's real name in describing her case to you. Certainly, there's something more than simple ethics between us. I understood from Miss Locker that you recommended me to her. This didn't seem necessarily ominous at first. Perhaps I speculated your relationship with the girl was such that made it awkward for you to take her as one of your own patients. Actually, it's still not clear to me just how deeply you can be implicated in the overall experience I had with Miss L. So you'll have to forgive my stupidity as crudely crop up in the body in this correspondence. My first impression of Miss Locker, as she positioned herself almost side-saddle in a leather chair before me, was that of a tense but basically self-possessed young woman. She was outfitted, I noticed, in much the classic style you normally favor. I won't go into our first visit. I won't go into our second visit. And after a brief chat, we zeroed in on what Miss Locker called the motivating factor for consulting me. This involved, as you may well know, a recurring dream she had over a period of about a month. What will follow are the events of that dream, as I have composed them from the tape, Miss Locker's September 10th session. In the dream, our subject has entered into a new life, at least to the extent that she holds a different job from her waking one. Miss Locker had already informed me that 3 years she had worked as a loan processor at a local financial firm. However, her working day in the dream finds her a long-time employee of a fashionable clothing shop. Like those witnesses from the prosecution that the government wishes to protect from new identities, she's been outfitted by the dream with what seems to be mostly tacked, but somehow complete biography. A marvelous trick of the mind, this. It appears that one of the duties of her new job is to change the clothes of the mannequins in the store. She, in fact, feels as if her entire existence is slavishly given over to dressing and undressing these dummies. She's profoundly dissatisfied with her lot, and the mannequins become the focal point of her animus. Such is the general background presupposed by the dream, which now began in proper. As our dummy dresser approaches her work, she's overwhelmed by an amorphous anxiety without a specific source. Their unclothed bodies repel her touch because, as Miss Locker explained, they're neither warm nor cold, as only artificial bodies can be. Note, this rare awareness of temperature in a dream, albeit natural. And after bitterly surveying the ranks of these putty-faced creatures, she says, "Time to stop dancing and get dressed, you sleeping beauties." These words are spoken with spontaneity, as if ritually uttered to inaugurate some dressing session. But the dream changes before the dresser is able to put one stitch on the dummies, who stare at nothing with anticipating eyes. The working day is now finished. She has returned to her small apartment, where she retires to bed, and she has a dream. The dream is that of the mannequin dresser and not hers. She emphatically points out it's the mannequin dresser's dream. And the mannequin dresser dreams she's in her bedroom. But what she now thinks of as her bedroom is, to all appearances, actually an archaically furnished hall with the dimensions of a small theater. The room is dimly lit by jeweled lamps along the wall, the light shining upon an intricately patterned carpet and various pieces of old furniture. She perceives the objects of the scene more as pure ideas and material phenomena, for details are blurry, and there are many shadows. There is something, however, which she visualizes quite clearly. One of the walls in the lofty room is missing, and beyond this great gap is a view of star-clustered blackness. The dreamer is positioned on the side of the room, from the brick on the cloudy abyss, and sitting on the edge of the velvety divan, she stares and waits without a breath or a heartbeat, and all is silent. Another odd perception to have in such a dream. The silence somehow electrifies the dream, with strange currents of force, betokening an unseen, demonic presence, she says. Then a new feeling enters the dream, One slightly more tangible, there seems to be an iciness drifting in from the starscape across the room. Temperature again. Rare. And once again our dreamer experiences a premonitory dread of something unknown. Without moving her place on that uncomfortable couch, she visually searches the room for clues to the source of her terror. Many areas are inaccessible to her sight, like a picture that had been scribbled out in places. But she sees nothing particularly frightening and is relieved for a moment. Then, her trepidation begins anew, and she realizes for the first time she hasn't locked in behind her, and indeed she seems physically unable to do so. Something is back there. She feels this to be horribly true. She almost knows the thing is, but afflicted with some kind of oneric aphasia, she cannot find the words for what she fears. She can only wait, hoping that sudden shock will soon bring her out of the dream. For she's now aware that she is dreaming, thinking of herself in the third person. The words, "she is dreaming," somehow form a ubiquitous motif for the present situation. And as a legend written somewhere on the bottom of the dream, an echoing voice bounces here and there around the room. And as a motto printed upon fortune cookie-like strips of paper and hidden in bureau drawers, and as a broken record repeating itself on ancient Victrola inside the dreamer's head. Then all the words, this monotonous slogan, gather from their diverse places, and like alighting flocks of birds, settle in the area behind the dreamer's back. There they twitter for a moment, and upon the frozen shoulders of statues in a park. This is actually like the way it seems to the dreamer, including the statue. Something statuesque is approaching her. It radiates a field of dynamic tension that grows intense the closer it comes, its shadow lengthening upon the floor. And still she cannot turn around to see the horror behind her. For at this point, she cannot move her body, which is stiff-jointed and rigid. Perhaps she can scream, make an attempt to do so, but this fails, because by then there's already a firm and tepid hand that has covered her mouth from behind. The fingers on her lips feel like thick, naked crayon. Then she sees a long, slim arm, extending itself over her left shoulder, and a hand that is holding some filthy rags before her eyes, and shaking them, making them dance. And at that moment, a dry, sibilant voice whispers in her ear, "It's time to get dressed, little darling." She tries to look away, her eyes being the only thing she can move, and now for the first time she notices that all around the room, in the shadowed places, people dressed as dolls. And their forms are collapsed, and their mouths are wide open. They don't look as if they're still alive, but some of them have actually become dolls, their flesh no longer supple, their eyes having lost the appearance of teary moistness. Others are at various intermediate stages between humanness and dollhood. With horror, the dreamer now becomes aware that her own mouth is open wide, and it won't close. But at last, shaking with tremors of the uncanny, she's able to turn around and face the menacing agent. And the dream now reaches a shattering crescendo, and she awakes. She does not, however, awake in the bed of the Manikin dresser in a dream within a dream, but instead finds herself directly transported into the tangled, though real bed covers of her lone processor self. Not exactly sure where or who she is for a moment. Her first impulse on waking is to complete the movement she began in the dream, that is turning round to look behind her. And the hypnopathic hallucination that followed made her feel as if she had temporarily lost her mind. And what she saw, upon pivoting about, was more than just a blank wall, for projecting out of the moon-disturbed place about this illusion, and here we go deeper into an already dubious realm, was a face. It didn't melt away into the background of the wall, the way post-dream projections usually do. It seemed rather that the protruding visage, in one smooth movement, withdrew back into the wall, and her scream summoned more than a few concerned persons from neighboring apartments. End of dream and related experiences. Now, my darling, you can probably imagine my reaction to the above psychic yarn. Every loose skein I follow led back to you. The character of Miss Locklear's dream is strongly reminiscent, in both mood and scenario, of matters you have been exploring for some years now. And I'm referring, of course, to the all-around astral ambience of Miss Locker's dream, and how eerily it relates to certain notions, and very well theories, that in my opinion have become altogether too central in your oeuvre, as well as your view. Above all, I refer to those other worlds you say you've detected through a combination of occult studies and depth analysis. To speak your ideas with regard to Miss Locker's dream, you can see the correlations, especially in the winding plot of her narrative. But I'll tell you when these link with the fanciful hypothesis and what really struck me with a hammer blow. It was just after she had related her dream to me. Now riding the saddle of her chair in the normal position, she made a few remarks obviously intended to convey the full extent of her disquiet. I'm sure she thought it was rigorous to tell me that after her dream episode she began entertaining doubts concerning who she really was, what she really was, loan processor, Manikin dresser, other. And rationally, she knew her genuine factual self. However, some new sense of unreality undermined her complete emotional assurance in the matter. Surely, you can see how the foregoing existential tricks fit in with those harassments of the self, as you style such phenomena. And just what are the boundaries of the self? Are there secret communions of seemingly separate things? How to animate and inanimate? The trouble with all this, my beloved, is the way you're so adamant about this objective reality. How you sometimes manage to infect others with your far-fetched convictions. Me, for instance. After hearing Miss Locker tell her dream, I found myself unconsciously analyzing her multiplications of roles, including the role of the reversal of the Manikin. Really did put me in the mind of some divine being that was splintering and scarring itself to relieve its cosmic ennui, as indeed a few of the well-reputed gods of world religion supposedly do. I also thought about your divinity of the dream, a thing which is all-powerful in its own sphere. Contemplating the realm of Miss Locker's dream, I did experience a fleeting sense of that old vagary about a sopolistic dream deity commanding all it sees, all of which is only itself. And a corollary of solipsism. It even occurred to me. If any possible universe, one always has to allow that there are universes that may be only dreams. And then the problem becomes... And this is something one can never know. The fact that the overwhelming majority of thinkers reject any doctrine of facts. The overwhelming majority of them. And after all, the feeling of dissociation with reality takes place in a conscious state, not in dreams, wherein everything is absolutely real. See what you've done to me. For reasons that you well know, I try to give what serious consideration I can to your aberrant investigations, and I can't help myself. But I don't think it's right to be exerting your influence upon the innocence of Miss Locker. I should tell you that I hypnotized the girl, and her unconscious testimony seems very much to incriminate you. And she practically demanded the hypnosis, feeling this to be an easy way of unveiling the source of her problems. Because of her frantic insistence, I obliged her. A serendipitous discovery ensued. She was a superior subject. In hypnosis, we restricted ourselves to penetrating the mysteries of her dream. Her mesmerized rendition of it was amazingly consistent with the waking one, with the exception of one important item, which I'll get to in a moment. I asked her to enlarge upon her feelings in the dream, and any sense of meaning she experienced. Her response to these questions was sometimes given in incoherent language. She said some quite awful things about life and lies, and this dream of flesh. I don't think I need to go into details of the chilling nonsense that she uttered, for I've heard you say just the same. Really, It's appalling the way you both dwell on and in your zones of the metaphysical flayed self. This little thing which Mitch Lockyer mentioned, under hypnosis, and which I deferred referencing in his particulars, was a very telling piece of data. It told on you. For when my patient first described the senses of her dream drama to me, she had forgotten, or just neglected, to touch on the presence of another character, hidden in the background. The deep cover agent was the proprietor of the clothing store, a domineering boss, who was always played by a certain lady, a certain psychoanalyst. But the hypnotized Miss Locker did remark in passing on the ideity of the imperious figure in the dream of her work. The information being one of the many underlying suppositions of the dream. So, you, my dear, were present in Miss Locker's hypnotic statement, in more than just spirit. Which brings us back to Miss Locker. By the close of our first night, the only session I still wasn't sure whether she was willing or unwilling, hence I kept mum about everything concerning her role in the mystery tale. As Dr. Bovary tried to assuage the oppressive dreams of his wife with a prescription of valerian and camphor baths, I supplied Miss Locker with a program of serenity that included Valium and companionship, the latter of which I also recommended for us, darling. Then, we made a date for the following Wednesday at the same time. Miss Locker seemed most grateful, though not enough, according to my secretary, that is, to pay up what she owed, and wait till you find out where she wanted to send the bill. The following week, Miss Locker did not appear for her appointment. This did not really alarm me, for as you know, many patients armed with a script of tranquilizers and a single experience therapy decide they don't need any more help. By then I had developed such a personal interest in Miss Locker's case, and I was seriously disappointed at the prospect of not being able to pursue it further. You'll have to forgive me if by this time I begin to feel like the victim of some sort of hoax. Maggie, I intercomed, how many more appointments for this afternoon?
Just one,
she immediately answered, and then without being asked said,
but I can cancel it if you'd like.
I said I would like, and that I intended to be the first out, today in the afternoon. My intention was to call on Miss Locker, the probably also phony address on her patient form. I had the suspicion that the address would lead to the same geographical spot as had the electronic nexus of a false phone number. Of course, I could have easily verified this, but knowing you, I thought that a personal visit was warranted, and I was right. The address was a half-hour's drive away. It was in a high-class suburb on the west side of town, and that high-class suburb in which I have my office. I parked my car, turned, in the middle of the suburb's shopping district. This was last Wednesday, which, if you'll recall, was a strange time, an abysmal day. I do not list among your orchestrated connivances of my adventure. It was dim and moody most of the morning, and so presumably dark by late afternoon that there were stars seemingly visible in the sky. A storm was imminent, and the air was appropriately galvanized with a pre-deluge of feeling and suspense. Display windows were softly glowing, and a jewelry store twinkled in the threatening glow as I passed by. Of course, there's no further need to describe the atmosphere of that day. I just wanted to show how sensitive I was to a certain kind of mood, and I know you adore, and how ripe I'd become to the staged antics that follows. Distance-wise, I only had to walk a few steps before arriving at the place, purported to be the home of Miss L, but then it was quite clear when I found. There was no surprise so far. When I looked up at the neon-inscribed name on the shop, I heard a young woman's telephone voice whispering the words in my ear. Mademoiselle. Fashion. This is a store where it seems you acquire so many of your lovely ensembles. But I'm jumping ahead of myself, and I'm jumping ahead of my expectations. What I did not expect were the sheer lengths to which you would go, nor to fire up my sense of strange revelation. Was this, I pray, done to bring us closer in the divine bond of unreality? Anyway, I saw what you wanted me to see, what I thought you wanted me to see, in the window of fashions. And the thing was even dressed in the same plaid-skirted outfit, and I recall Miss Locker was wearing on her first visit to the office. And I have to admit, that had me taken aback. And then again, perhaps I was subliminally looking for a resemblance between Miss Locker and the figure in the window. You can probably guess what I noticed. I thought I noticed about its eyes. What you would have perceived as a watery gleam and fixed gaze. The rain was coming down harder as I made a mad dash back to the black sedan. A bit soaked, I sat in the car for a few moments, wiping off the rain-spotted glasses with a handkerchief. I said that I felt a slight case of paranoia coming on, and what follows proves it. While sitting there with my glasses off, I thought I saw something move in the rearview mirror. My visual vulnerability, combined with the claustrophobic sensation of being in a car with rain-blinded windows, together added up to a momentary but very definite panic on my part. I quickly put on my glasses and found there was no one, no thing, whatever, in the back seat. The point is that I was forced to physically verify in order to relieve my spasm of anxiety. You succeeded. You succeeded in getting me to experience a moment of self-terror. And in that moment, I too became an accomplice in the mystical conspiracy of a treacherous universe. You have indeed succeeded, assuming my inferences stand solid, and swaying me on a string you now hold in your delicate fingers. And having confessed as much, I can now get to the real focus. I have not been well lately, and I think you know the reason why. This business with Miss Locker, far from bringing us to a more intimate understanding of each other, has only made the situation worse. Horrible nightmares now plague me on a nightly basis. Me, of all people. And they are directly due to the well-intentioned influence of you and Miss L. And let me describe one of these nightmares for you, and thereby describe them all. In the dream, I'm in my bedroom, sitting upon an unmade bed, wearing my pajamas. The room is partially illuminated by beams from a streetlight shining through the window. And it seems to me that a galaxy of constellations, though not witnessed firsthand, are contributing their light to the scene, a vaporous glowing which unnaturally blanches the entire upstairs of the house. I have to use the bathroom and walk sleepily out to the hallway, where I get the shock of my life. In the whitened hallway, I cannot say brightened, because it is almost as if a phosphorescent powder coats everything. There are things that look like people dressed as dolls, or else dolls made up to look like people, and I remember being confused about which it was. They're lying down on the floor, at the top of the stairway, and even upon the stairs themselves they disappear into the darker region below, and when I emerge from the bedroom I see their eyes, shining in the white darkness, and their heads all turned in the same direction. Worse, it talks, and its voice is a horrible parody of a human. Even more horrible are its words. And suddenly I begin to feel very weak, as if my life were being drained out of me. Summoning all my willpower, I manage to rush back to the bed, which ends the dream. And after I awake screaming, my heart pounds like a mad prisoner inside me, and doesn't let up until morning. And this is very disturbing. There's truth in those studies relating nightmares to cardiac arrest. For some poor souls, that imaginary incubus squatting under the sleeping forms can do real medical harm. And I don't want to become one of those cases. It's now after midnight, and I dread going to sleep, having another of those nightmares. And you can save me from this fate. If you only can find it in your heart to do so, but you must hurry. Time is running out. Tell me it's not too late. Please don't destroy everything. You'll only hurt yourself. And Despite your high-flown theories of masochism, there's really nothing divine about it. So no more playing of this inhuman visionary. Be simple. Be nice. I'm so tired. And I must say goodnight then. But not goodbye. Hear me now. Sleep your singular sleep and dream of the many, all the others that you are. Die into them and leave me in peace. I will come for you later. And then you can always be with me in a special corner, all our own. Just as my little Amy once was. This is what you've wanted, and this is what you'll have. Die into them, you simple